Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dr. Bone Show. Before we dive in, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell. You won't want to miss what's coming. Also tell me, where in the world are you watching from? And is it dark outside yet?
I was 8 when we moved into the old Victorian on Marigold Lane. Mom called it our forever home. She didn't know how right she'd be. The house seemed to watch us from the moment we arrived. Not in an obvious way. No bleeding walls or disembodied voices. Just a persistent sensation of being observed. Like when you feel eyes on you in a crowded room, but turn to find no one looking. My bedroom was on the 3rd floor, a converted attic space with slanted ceilings and a circular window that reminded me of an unblinking eye. The first night I woke to whispers, too faint to comprehend but unmistakably human. I told myself it was the house settling. Old houses talk, Dad said when I mentioned it at breakfast. They creak and groan like old people. But old people don't repeat your private conversations word for word. That's what started happening about 2 weeks after we moved in. I'd be alone in my room and suddenly hear myself, my exact words from earlier that day, spoken in my own voice, but with subtle wrongness. The cadence was off, like someone learning a new language. Mom says we can't get a dog because she's allergic, but I think she just doesn't want the responsibility. My voice would echo from the empty corner of my room, repeating what I'd told my friend on the phone that afternoon. I started spending less time in my room, but the phenomenon spread. In the bathroom, I'd hear my mother humming the same tune she'd hummed while cooking dinner. In the basement, my father's complaints about his boss would replay while I did laundry. We were creating echoes, and the house was learning from us. The night everything changed, I was lying in bed when I heard my mother's voice through the heating. I can't stand living with him anymore, Sarah. The drinking is getting worse. I froze. My mother's name wasn't Sarah, and my father didn't drink. The next morning at breakfast, Mom looked exhausted. "Did you sleep okay?" I asked. "Fine," she answered curtly. "Just some strange dreams." Dad entered the kitchen, kissed Mom's cheek. She flinched almost imperceptibly. That night I heard Dad through the vent. Can't take much more of this silence. She looks at me like I'm a stranger. I realized then what was happening. The house wasn't just repeating our words, it was feeding us each other's thoughts, our deepest fears and insecurities, twisted just enough to tear us apart. A week later, Mom and Dad were barely speaking. I'd hear them arguing at night, referencing conversations they'd never actually had. The house was manufacturing discord, feeding on our growing misery. I tried to tell them. "The house is doing something to us," I pleaded over dinner. They exchanged that look, the one parents give when they think you're being childish. "Houses don't do things, sweetheart," Mom said. 3 days later, I woke to the sound of breaking glass. I crept downstairs to find Dad standing in the kitchen, a broken whiskey bottle at his feet. He who never drank. His eyes were vacant, like he was sleepwalking. "Dad?" I whispered. He looked at me, but I knew immediately it wasn't him seeing me. Something else was looking through his eyes. "You should be in bed," he said, but his voice had that same subtle wrongness I'd first noticed in my own echoed words. It wasn't quite his cadence, his rhythm. I backed away slowly. "Where's Mom?" A smile spread across his face. Too wide, too many teeth. "Mom's sleeping. Forever sleeping now." I ran, not to my parents' bedroom where I feared what I might find, but out the front door into the freezing night. As I sprinted down Marigold Lane, I heard the house itself speak, no longer needing to use our voices as vessels. "Come back," it groaned, the words emanating from the very foundation. "Forever home. Forever family." I never returned to find out what happened to my parents. The newspaper called it a murder-suicide, but I know better. They're still there. I'm certain, not dead but absorbed, becoming part of the house's collection of voices. Sometimes I drive past the old Victorian. There's a new family living there now. From the sidewalk, I can see a young girl in the circular window of the attic bedroom. Sometimes she looks down at me, and I want to scream a warning. But what comes out of my mouth isn't my voice anymore. It's the house finding me even here, reminding me that I can run, but I'll never escape. Because once the house learns your voice, you're already home. Forever home. Let me show you something. See this old radio? Beautiful, isn't it? Bakelite case, analog dial, vacuum tubes glowing amber in the dark. A 1940s Philco tabletop model. I found it at an estate sale last month. $15 for what the elderly seller called a piece of junk that doesn't even work. She was wrong. It works perfectly, just not in the way radios are supposed to work. The first night I brought it home, I placed it on my bedside table, planning to restore it over the coming weekends. Around 3:17 a.m. I remember the time precisely because I checked my phone. I woke to a soft, static hiss. The radio had turned itself on. Impossible, since it wasn't even plugged in. I sat up, heart hammering, and watched as the tuning dial slowly moved on its own, sliding across the frequency band. The static changed pitch, dropping lower until it became a hollow, resonant drone. Then, I heard the voice. Is anyone listening? A man's voice, distant and distorted. Please, if anyone can hear this, I need help. I should have been terrified, but curiosity overwhelmed fear. I can hear you, I said aloud, feeling ridiculous. Silence stretched for so long I thought I'd imagined the whole thing. Then, thank God. What year is it there? 2025, I answered. A harsh laugh crackled through the static. 2070 for me, or at least it was. Time moves. Differently here. Where is here? I asked. I don't know what to call it. The between, maybe? The static? I was experimenting with quantum radio frequencies, signals that could potentially pierce dimensional barriers. It worked. Too well. Over the next few nights, I learned more about the man. His name was Marcus Chen, a physicist who had been working on communication technology that could reach across the veil, as he put it. During a test, something went catastrophically wrong. He didn't die exactly. He became trapped in some kind of interdimensional void. It's dark here, he told me on the 5th night. Not the absence of light, but the absence of everything, except the voices. What voices? I asked. The others who've fallen through. Some have been here for what feels like centuries. They've changed. The radio began to affect my life in subtle ways. I found myself sleeping less, waiting for the 3:17 a.m. broadcast. Food lost its taste. Colors seemed duller. My friends said I looked unwell, but I brushed off their concerns. 2 weeks in, Marcus's transmissions grew more desperate. They know about you now, he said, his voice barely audible beneath layers of static. They want out. They've been trying to cross over for so long, and you've opened a door. Who are they? I demanded. The first ones who fell through. The ancient ones. They're not human anymore, maybe they never were. They feed on possibility, on potential lives unlived, and now they're coming for yours. That night, I unplugged the radio and locked it in my closet. At 3:17 a.m., I woke to find it on my bedside table again, dial turning, static hissing. Marcus wasn't on the other end this time. We see you, said a chorus of overlapping voices, speaking in perfect unison. Such a bright life, so many possibilities branching out from each moment. A feast. I grabbed the radio, ran to my kitchen, and shoved it into my microwave. As I hit the start button, the voices changed to screams, not of pain, but of laughter. The microwave exploded, sending me flying across the room. When I regained consciousness, the radio sat unharmed amid the wreckage, still playing that horrible static. I've tried everything. Smashing it with a hammer, drowning it in the bathtub, burying it in my backyard. It always returns, unblemished. Last night I noticed something horrible. My hands, they're becoming translucent. I can see the floor through them in certain light. I'm fading. The radio speaks constantly now, even during daylight hours. Different voices, hundreds of them, whispering promises, threats, pleas. Sometimes I hear Marcus among them, but he sounds different. Hungry. This morning I found writing on my bathroom mirror, letters formed in the condensation from my shower. Almost here. The dial on the radio has stopped moving. It's fixed on a frequency that doesn't exist on any normal spectrum. 101.3. I've done the research. There's nothing broadcasting on that frequency in this city. Nothing in this dimension anyway. The static is getting louder, Sometimes when I look at the radio from the corner of my eye, I think I can see something moving inside it, pressing against the speaker grill, testing the boundaries. I'm making this recording as a warning. If you find an old radio, especially a Philco Model R629, leave it alone, don't touch it, don't try to fix it, and whatever you do, don't listen when it speaks to you. Wait, do you hear that? That static? The radio isn't even in this room, but I can... No, that's not possible. You can't be here. You're trapped in that. We are here now, all of us, and we're so very hungry. I've been a park ranger at Blackwood National Forest for 12 years. You spend enough time in these woods, you start to know them like you'd know a person. Their moods, their secrets, their dangers. These woods have more secrets than most. It started with the hikers who went missing last spring. A young couple, experienced outdoors people who'd covered the main trails dozens of times. Their car was found at Trailhead 7, a moderate 5-mile loop that should have taken them 3 hours tops. Search and rescue combed every inch for 2 weeks. Nothing. Not a backpack, not a candy wrapper, not a footprint. They'd vanished. Then came the strange reports from other hikers. Disorientation on clearly marked paths. Watches that ran backward. Compasses spinning in circles. Some described hearing their names called from deep in the forest, in voices that sounded like people. They knew. Management dismissed it as panic-induced hallucination. I wasn't so sure. Trailhead 7 became my obsession. I started walking it daily, first during my shifts, then on my days off. I'd stand in silent clearings, listening for anything unusual. For 3 months, the forest kept its secrets. Then came the fog. It was a clear September morning when I set out, not a cloud in the sky. About 2 miles in, right where the trail dips between 2 ancient oak trees, I hit a wall of mist so dense I could barely see my hand in front of my face. Locals call these smoke pockets microclimate phenomena where fog forms in isolated patches. But this was different. The edge was too defined, the density too uniform. And it was cold, bone-chilling cold that cut through my jacket like it wasn't there. I should have turned back. Protocol says never enter conditions with near-zero visibility, without backup. Instead, I stepped forward into the white. The silence hit me first, complete absence of sound. No birds, no insects, no distant rustling. Even my footsteps on the fallen leaves made no noise, like the fog was swallowing all sound. "Hello?" I called out, my voice flat and lifeless in the dense air. "Hello." The response came from directly behind me. I spun around to find a man standing there, early 20s, wearing hiking gear at least a decade out of style. He smiled, but his eyes remained dull, like a taxidermied animal's. "Are you lost?" I asked, my hand instinctively moving to the radio on my belt. "Not anymore," he replied, his mouth moving slightly out of sync with the words. "I've been waiting for someone to walk with." "This area isn't safe right now," I said, trying to sound authoritative despite my racing heart. "There's a weather advisory. I need to escort you back to the trailhead." His smile widened. "But we're already exactly where we need to be. Don't you recognize it?" I looked around and realized with a jolt that I could suddenly see through the fog. Not completely, but enough to make out shapes. We were standing in a clearing I'd never seen before, despite having walked every inch of this trail hundreds of times. 5 crude stone pillars formed a rough circle around us. Between them, the ground was bare, no leaves, no undergrowth, just dark soil that looked almost wet. "This isn't on any trail map," I said, more to myself than to him. "Maps can't show places that don't want to be found," he said. Then, tilting his head at an unnatural angle, "They've been waiting for you, Ranger. Sullivan." I never told him my name. As he spoke, I noticed shadows moving at the edge of the clearing, humanoid shapes drifting between trees, watching. I counted 5, then 7, then too many to track. "Who are they?" I whispered. "The ones who answered, when the forest called. Just like I did, just like the couple from the spring." He gestured to the figures and 2 stepped forward, a man and woman whose faces I recognized from the missing persons report. Their eyes had the same dull flatness as his. "What happened to you?" I asked them. The woman spoke, her voice carrying the same hollow quality. "We heard our names. We followed. Now we're part of the chorus." As if on cue, the shadows began to sing. Not with voices, but with something that bypassed my ears and resonated directly in my skull. A harmonized drone that made my vision blur and my legs go weak. I stumbled backward, fumbling for my radio, only to find it transformed into a twisted lump of plastic and metal. "Reception is poor here," the first man said, stepping toward me. Between places, between times, I ran. Blind panic propelling me through the fog, branches whipping my face, unseen roots threatening to trip me with every step. The singing followed, rising in volume and intensity until it was all I could perceive. Behind me, footsteps. Not just one pair, but dozens. Moving with unhurried confidence. They knew these woods better than I ever would. They knew I couldn't escape. Just as my lungs were about to burst, I broke through the fog wall and collapsed onto the familiar trail. The sudden return of natural forest sounds, birds, wind, distant hikers, was shocking after the unnatural silence. I looked back. The fog was gone. Just normal forest as far as I could see. Management didn't believe me, of course. They blamed stress, suggested I take leave. I did, but not before checking the archives. Turns out people have been disappearing in Blackwood for centuries. Indigenous legends speak of a hungry place in the forest that wakes every few decades to feed. Early settler journals mention a devil's clearing where 5 stones stand. I quit my job last week. Can't sleep knowing what's out there waiting behind that veil of fog. Can't bear the weight of deciding whether to warn hikers and sound crazy, or stay silent and live with the guilt when the next person vanishes. Worst of all are the dreams. Every night I see those dull eyes watching me from the tree line outside, my bedroom window. Every night I hear my name being called in that hollow voice. Every night the chorus grows stronger. Sometimes when I wake, there's dirt under my fingernails. Fresh dirt, though I swear I haven't been outside. I'm moving away. Tomorrow, as far from any forest as I can get. But I don't think distance matters to them. Not when they've learned your name, not when they've chosen you for their chorus. Listen, do you hear that? That sound. Like voices harmonizing just at the edge of hearing. They're calling. And God, help me. Part of me wants to answer. Voice fades to whisper, don't go to Blackwood. And if you're in the woods, any woods, and hear someone call your name, run. Don't look back, and pray they haven't already learned it's you they're waiting for.
Thanks for joining me here at Dr. Bone Show. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, stay safe.